Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land, like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word.
Over the next, this next week, then we'll skip a week, then we'll come back and get another one because on the 21st, I won't be here. You'll have Mark Myers. Some of you might remember Mark. He was a pastor here, served here a few years. I don't know how many, but I know he served here. And looking forward to having him come and to share with you. He's very excited about coming back home. And so we'll have 3 weeks here that we'll go together in the book of Hebrews. And I'm kind of anxious to get into it because, for one, I was lucky. You ever hide something and then all of a sudden you run into it by accident and you found it, you know? I was looking at all my books on my library, and I got to get rid of these. So I got rid of about 45 books. I was real happy because I don't have to look at them no more, you know? And so I took them and put them in a box, and as I was putting them in the box, I run onto 4 books on the lectionary for the year C. Now, some of you, like Gary, will know what I'm talking about. A, B, and C. And so A, B, and C, if you go through those 3, you're pretty well going through the whole Bible and preaching through the Bible. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I look, and there's all 4 of them. I said, wouldn't it be ironic if those were the right ones for this year? And it was. So I've been reading and reading and reading. I won't throw it all at you at once, but it has been exciting to go back and to find something that was old, thought you had it put away, and God brings it back out and enthuses you with the same old stuff. So today we're going to start with Hebrews, and we're going to stay in that, but we're going to talk about 3 different things. Today it's about living strong. Now, many of you probably that have had cancer know the phrase live strong. And you probably know that that was Lance Armstrong's foundation. Now, Beth Ann and I, we learned that because where we went to get her treated was the same place Lance was fueling some of that money in Indianapolis. And so I was thinking about, as Christians, we need to live strong, but I didn't want to get in trouble with the trademark, so I went living strong instead of live strong. And so that's what we're going to learn about today. And how do we live strong? And many of you may say, well, I'm living just fine. Well, there's a coming a day that being a Christian will not be the easiest thing you've ever done in your life. Will you be strong enough with your foundation to stand on what you know, who you know, and who else you can have with you. And will they run or will they stay? Now, that's a lot to talk about in just a 20-minute period, but I'm going to try and hit some of it, and hopefully you'll go back and read Hebrews 11, the whole chapter, is what I'm hoping, okay? That you'll at least look at it, and I'm going to touch on some of it today a little bit differently than I normally do, which will be straight out of your scripture, okay? So it'll be a little different, because there's one thing about this whole story. It will change you if you listen to what it says. It will change you. You ever heard that phrase, keep on keeping on? In my little area where we come from, whenever, there was another catchphrase that got real popular. It was always said, get her done, okay? But this one was back in our place. It was always keep on keeping on at our church. And the reason was that we didn't sweat the small stuff. We cared about, did people know about Jesus? And if they knew about Jesus, would they want to be friends with Jesus and us at the same time? And in our little community of 1,100 people, there was not much in there. We had a Casey's, and that's the only thing that made it look like a town. And everything else was just pretty well boarded up, even around the square. And so when we started looking at what could we do as a church, we could bring hope into a community that thought they were done, thought they didn't have anything to give. They lost their biggest business there was Champ Labs, which was a oil filter company, and it was owned by a conglomerate that closed down the main plant. And so everybody had lost their hope. Everybody was losing their faith. Matter of fact, I had a child that was in a freshman, and he went to Eastern Illinois University. And he came up to his dad one day and told his dad he didn't believe in Jesus anymore. His professor talked him out of it. Well, you know what his dad did? He called me and said, now what do we do? And I said, well, I don't know. He's in Charleston, and I'm here. What are we going to do? And so we hopped into the car. Took him out to eat. Listened to him. Started praying for him. Now, he bowed his head and he prayed, but nothing happened. And for about months, I never heard a word from him. Never heard nothing from his dad either that he was getting any worse. And that day he came to church with his fiancée. They sat about 3 rows back, right in front of me. And, man, I could tell something was different. Why would he come to church if he didn't believe in God? And so I kept on preaching, and finally, during the choir song, he gets up and he comes to the altar and recommits his life to Christ, and his mom and dad run down from the choir loft to run, and just tears run and run and run. Keep on keeping on who you are. People will see Jesus. They have to deal with the Jesus they see. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. But you keep on keeping on, and you'll see things happen. Keep living strong. Don't let the world deter you from a world that you've been promised. When you look at it, it says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we don't see. Now that's a phrase that a lot of people throw at you. You know, faith is this, and it's just like a cliche to them. But I'm telling you that when I first got saved, when I first met Jesus, and I came out of that awareness that God cared enough to send His Son that I could rely on Him, my life changed. The reason it changed because I didn't put barriers on my God. I didn't put any barrier on Him. I mean, if He said He could heal somebody, if I would pray for them, with praying that I would believe that He could do it, if He chose, then I should be the one to pray. So I would go up there, and Pastor Shane would be preaching. And after he'd get done, he'd always ask you, anybody want to come up the altar and be prayed for? And you know what he would do? He'd always call me out of the crowd, and me and him would get down there and pray with people. We were seeing people get saved that had been in that community for 20 to 25 years. And the only reason it was is because we had faith that God could do it. And that if they would believe that God could change their life, they would be changed. This whole book's about faith. Where's your limit on faith? Do you have a limit? Do you even have faith? of a mustard seed? Or has the world chased you away from that faith? Because the world is changing right in front of our very eyes. Things are happening right now that you should be watching out for. Now, I'm not one of them fear people. I'm not going to try and fear you into it. I want you to say, I am looking and I've got my eyes open. That's all I'm asking you for. Because I'm telling you, things around here are going to change faster than we want them to. Faster than we want them to. The other day I was listening to, on the radio, I was listening on the radio. And I listened to it, and I was listening. The urgency that pastor had when he was preaching is what we all need. Now, I'll start with this so you kind of know I am going to talk about Hebrews. The letter of Hebrews was written either in the 60s or the 80s, they don't know for sure, by an unnamed Christian leader to a community made up of both Gentiles and Jewish converts. At this time, Christians were largely considered to be a subversive group, like any scapegoated community. They had become subject to hostility, insults, and abuse from members of the dominant force in the privileged community. They had suffered many hardships, including the loss of respect. Does that sound like a Christian today? Yeah, stop and think about it. What I'm reading could be read today if you look at the newspapers. And then suffered many hardships, including loss of respect, job insecurity because of who they were, or financial injury. Some had even been arrested and imprisoned by those who sought to reform them. This day and age, some even kill you because you believe in Jesus Christ. We aren't in that, and we understand that, but we cannot alienate ourselves from what the world is because we're part of that world. It's so easy in a small community like ours to just let that pass by because we don't feel it, we don't see it, so we don't know what's happening. In some ways, the members of the community known as the Hebrews are like cancer survivors. How many cancer survivors do we have in here? Would you just raise your hand? Yeah, quite a few of you. Quite a few of you. Think about it. Cancer survivors. There are people that were given the worst of the worst news, that held on to the one hand that they could really truly hang on to, even with their families. They had to reach higher than their family for the support level they needed, and they did. And you saw the survivors, and you can talk to them, and I guarantee you they'll say, I was never so close to God than when I was walking through that time, because He was the only thing I could rely on. His promises were true. He said, if you rely on me, I will never forsake you. He didn't say He'd heal you. He said, I'll never forsake you. And that means if you're walking through depression today, that's why I picked that one out. You would not believe how much depression is in our world. You wouldn't believe what you can hear. Some of your most high-ranking individuals are the ones that are the lowest, and they're playing a game is what they're doing. And it's going to cost them their life if we don't help. Where else can they go and know that they can be helped and not being persecuted for it? But to the church. You know, they are looking for an encouragement. They have been through a very challenging ordeal, and they made it thus far by faith. Now, many of you don't know this, but many that have cancer in your life, you know every time something comes up, you immediately think, it's back. Okay? And we do. And we as a community know that we fight a battle ongoing against sin. We think, well, we got rid of it in 19 whatever it was. When I got saved, I want you to know it's like a jacket that you're wearing. It's on you, and you don't know it until you finally come before God, who is a perfect God. And if you don't come before God enough, you'll never see it. You'll never know it. You'll never care. And before long, you're walking so far into it that you have become what you didn't want to become. I sat there yesterday and read that a couple of times before Beth Ann got home. Through that book I found. After reading that, I wonder sometimes if I really take it seriously. The end times are coming. They were told that, and yes, it's been way, way back there, and you can say, oh, I've got plenty of time. How do you know? Do you know if it's going to rain this afternoon? You'll tell me it's going to rain. My wife does that all the time. Beth Ann said, it's going to rain. I looked at the phone. I said, they're not right all the time. Who are you trusting? You want a relationship with God? You can trust that. Everything else falls. Everything else. And yeah, I may sound pretty stupid. I may be in love with a God that you don't know, but I'm telling you the facts that someday this place will be gone, and you're going to have to know Jesus. And you're not going to be afraid of him. You're going to run to him. And you're going to hear people running to him, and he'll say, get away from me, I know not thee. And you're going to hear that. Who in the world is suffering the kind of ostracism by the general public that we see today, that we read about there? You got an idea? I'm becoming one of them. The elderly. They're being shunned away. And if you don't believe me, just look at what's going on in the government where they want to work with Social Security. Where's your security at? Who's it with? What do you expect? I just got a letter in the mail that said, if you're thinking about retiring in 10 years or less, come to this seminar. I looked at Beth Ann and I said, you know what? They can tell me what it looks like today, but they can't guarantee me anything in the days and after. But my God can. My God can. See, we don't trust God enough with everything in our life. We sit back and we think we do, but we don't. Well, it slowed off, so you'll have to hit me. Went to sleep on me or something. Thank you. You're so good. I'm going to have to up her pay. Who are some of our scapegoats today? The immigrants. What about that immigration law? What do you think about them people? Would you take one of them here? Don't answer that. Just ask your question. And what would you do if people made fun of you because you did? You see, that's the way it is in this world today. If they don't believe in what you believe in, they're going to put you down so they can be higher than you. Okay? But you're going to have to be smarter than that. They're going to play those games. Senior citizens. When you look at senior citizens, you look down, and they're out there raising money to feed our senior citizens. That's stupid. The state should be able to take care of them. They've paid taxes in all those years, and now we have to beg to be paid, to be fed, because we can't do it ourselves, or we're not up here to be able to. It's stupid. But yet that's our world. And if it wasn't for people like you guys that are doing this over here, them little kids would go without their milk. The little kids would not have nothing we had when we were little kids. This world is not better, it's worse. God is erased out of the world. He's erased out of your schools. He's not in the world. We have to put him in the world. That's why he chose people. You can't stop people. If you want to see a riot, you don't start with 50 million people. You start with one person that wants to stand up, and the rest say, well, yeah, I do agree with that. And before long, they're all standing. I thought it was pretty neat. Christians. You want to know something? We have some crazy Christians just like everybody else has crazy people. We do. But that doesn't mean I don't want to be a Christian. It means I have to be a better Christian. It means I have to show them the other side of being a Christian. It shows that, yes, I may be persecuted because of being one of them people that believe in the way like they were. Or I stand up and I just say, well, I'm sorry, if you don't agree with me, I'll go with you guys. I can't do that. So someday you may come in here expecting your preacher to preach. He may be in jail. Why? Because they want to reform him. They want to zip your lip. There's a new law coming out, too, that will maybe, I hope, will open it up so we don't have to not be in the government. But right now, you can't do that. So you've got to be the ones that speak for God. Do you see what I mean? When you get into that ballot box and you pull that curtain, you and God are a team. Yeah. A responsible Christian prays before they do stuff like that. Who else would you add? What would you do? You know that TV show? I hate that show. Because I could be fooled just like anybody else. But what would you do if you wake up on Monday morning and you find out you got to put a chip in your child? What would you do if you had to have a chip implanted in you? In order to buy food, gasoline, all the things that you would need, what would you do? You see, we're not far from that stuff. It's a legitimate question to make sure that you're looking at the future with God's eyes, not with the world's eyes. I often think of this silly thing. Most of us carry one of these around. And you know what? Everybody and their dog knows where you're at. Many of them know what you say. So when I look at the world is not like it was when I was a little kid and I played with mud, which I did a lot. I mean, we'd climb the tree and we'd come down and build the forts in mud. All the fun stuff. I had a grandchild. I got another one with me today, little Delaney back there. And she's one of these little rats that play this thing all the time too. They're all trained right. They know what they need to do, okay? How to use it. And the first thing they ask for is what? How you doing, Papa? No, it ain't how you doing, Papa. What's the password to get on to the Wi-Fi? Yeah. Yeah, what is it? And they just die to get on there. Folks, we don't have the same world, so we can't just sit back on our laurels and say, they'll find out. They will not find out unless we're the ones to tell them. And my grandkids have not heard me talk like this since they've been born. But you know that if I don't say something, my grandkids will make a mistake and they won't be prepared and they won't make it to heaven, and it'll be my fault because I was sitting with them all the time and could have said something. And that's just the way I look at you guys. You're my family, my adopted family. And if I don't stand up here and get you to think about the promise God gave you, that if you hang tight with Him, you will make it to the end. You will make it. And you are an alien in this world, but you are at home in that one. So, and I believe that if we believe that with faith, we are living in that relationship right now. We don't have to wait to get the powers and the strengths that we need in that world. We get them right here. You're powered by the Holy Ghost, or like most people like to say, the Holy Spirit. You know? And if you're powered with the Holy Spirit, you can make it. It's just that it doesn't look like it. It's the things not seen that are yours. So, yes, you may look like you're dying. You may look like, but your promise is not in how you end this life. It's in what you get in the next one. And the promise is there. It's not a promise that's not there. It's a promise that is there. His promises are kept. Man lies all the time. He'll tell you, you'll get rich doing this. You'll get rich doing that. And the rich is the word that they use to get you. Now, over the 4th of July holiday in the United States during the final week of Ramadan, we were rocked by another round of terrorist attacks. The recent attack in Baghdad, Iraq, however, did not receive the same level of news coverage as others have, such as the attacks in Orlando and in Istanbul. Even though it was substantial, bombers killed almost 300 people and injured nearly 200. Why do you think we didn't see that in the news? They're on the other side of the people I'm talking about, those that we don't care, we don't want nothing to do with. Think about it. What is it that we're seeing in our world? The Hebrews' faith is the courage to endure, to stay the course, to keep the covenant, even through times of trial. Now, the key to that is to keep the covenant. I want to use that word for a moment. When we became members of this church, when you became members, you had a covenant that I will support this church by your attendance, by your finances, by your gifts and your graces. Now, I know we don't all keep those very solemnly sometimes. But when you look at God, he said faith is the courage to endure, to stay the course, to keep the covenant. He says, I will help you keep the covenant that I have made with you. The trouble is we don't go back for the help. We try to do it alone. And there's nothing shameful about admitting that, hey, I'm here and I haven't done what I could have done. I've not been what I should have been. But there's a day coming. I give up now and I pick up what you gave. There's some friends of mine that I won't name because you would know them, that are going through things right now that have to be wondering and doubting about their faith. And all I can tell them is I'm praying for you. Now, I said it that way because that's the way we think of it. That's all I can do. Truthfully, that's the best I can do. Because it leaves God in control of how he's going to bless you. Instead of going by what I see, that's the best to give you. I don't want the best that you can see. I want the best he can see. Because he can see it all. He knows where I'm going. He knows what doors he's opening up for me. And he knows where he wants me to go, but he can't make me. Hebrews is a chapter here. This chapter is the faith chapter. If you listen to this, I mean, it is just, if you don't have faith today, listen to me. Listen. I'm going to read where it doesn't have, where I didn't have it. Let's see. It goes down here. 16, we went there. So we're going to go 17. By faith. Listen to that phrase. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had received the promises was about to sacrifice his own one and only son, even though God had said to him, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Abraham reasoned that God could raise the dead, and figuratively speaking, he did receive Isaac back from the death. That's by faith. Without that phrase, by faith, you'd have had a man standing there saying, I don't know if I can do this. I really don't know. I wish God would just tell me. But faith tells you that if it's for God, that's where you're headed. Even though it looks scary. Even though it may look like you can't do it. Guess what? You may not be able to. Remember Moses and Aaron? Moses kept saying, I can't speak. I'm not a good speaker. God gave him somebody else. But the fact was that Moses was willing to go. He just didn't think he had the tools to do it. Many of us sitting here today know we can go do for God, but the thing is we don't trust our toolkit. That's what's wrong with us. We don't trust the toolkit that God gave us. So we say, my faith is not strong enough. I can't open up the box to get in to get the tools. All you need is faith. Goes on to say, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshipped as he leaned on top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions about his bones. In other words, everything that you read in this chapter is a faith chapter. And if you don't have faith, all you need to do is look at the ones that have had faith. Remember that all it was faith. They didn't have what we have today well, for instance, Lisa could text me today, it's okay, Mike, you can go. I paid your way. We don't have people that can tell us instantaneously. But if I go somewhere and I trust God, some way or another, God's going to get me to the place he said I should be at somehow. Kevin, your story this week, this week, where they had the breakdown on the RV, and everything worked out. But you knew if you asked for prayer and people would begin to pray, situations get smaller. They don't get bigger. They get smaller. Yes, they may blow up in your face, but people around you are praying. When I sent that out from you, it went around the world, and I know it did, because the man I sent it to is a dear friend of mine that has a worldwide prayer ministry. So you don't know where that help come from, why it come. You just know that as soon as you ask for God, you're going to the best place you can go for anything you need. Hebrews is a place to tell you about faith. Now, I want to ask you a question, and I know I don't have time, but I wanted to ask a question. Who in your lifetime has been that one person that pulled you from the side that said, I do have faith or I don't have faith? Who helped pull you across to the side that said, I do have faith. I've been watching him or I've been watching her. I do have faith. I know my faith is strong because I see it in them and I've asked for it. Give you an example. I'll try anyway. When I was a newborn Christian, I hadn't been filled with the Holy Ghost yet. Just a Christian, just practicing my faith. And George McDonald was a dear friend of mine. He would be one of them scapegoats like I was, outsiders. And George used to be a drunk, a real bad drunk, he said. This is all him telling me. I never knew him that way. And he lost his marriage. And she's in this church, and he's in this church. And they're both going to the same church. And George grabbed me one Sunday after church. He said, Mike, you'll never know how big your God is until you tell him the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I said, well, I did. I went forward, got saved. He said, just because you did that doesn't mean that you don't have things to work through and to acknowledge to the Father that you trust him now. Not on you hiding anything, not on you putting it under the carpet. You must trust him. I said, okay. Why are you telling me this? He said, because I must tell somebody. And he began to tell me something, and I mean, instead of pushing me away, it drew me into him, an authentic Christian, somebody that knew he was where he's at, but he wanted to be where he wanted to be with God. And so he told me, and it was so funny because he works at Walmart as a greeter. I mean, he's retired. And I said, man, God's got you in the right place. And he said, well, I lost my job. I said, what'd you lose your job for? Talking about Jesus. Talking about Jesus too much. Every time you come into Walmart, he'd say, God bless you, good to see you. And then all of a sudden on your way out, he'd be saying, now you go to church. Yeah, he would do that. And he was just that kind of a guy. So when he broke down in front of me, I didn't know what to do. And all of it was this. I have ill feelings towards my ex-wife. And she's in this church worshiping with me, and I can't stand her. I thought, is that all? And he yeah. That's all. And it's causing me not to worship God in the way I think I should, honestly. I said, well, what'd you tell me for? Well, you're friends with Carolyn. So? Can't you pray for us? I said, yeah, but why me? Because I trust you. Well, fast forward. I did pray, and they did get along. As a matter of fact, his wife went on his ex-wife was a lady like what Lisa and Lisa's going to do. Get you bookings, to go tours and stuff. And we went on one of her tours, but George was A-okay, and everything worked out well, and they still talk, and the kids get along great. But I'm here to tell you, folks, that tells me that God is God, And when you get released of something, you are totally different. Nothing around you can take control of you if you don't let it. But the fact of the matter is, we're too easy. The devil knows what he wants to use, but we don't have to let him win at all. We choose to let him win, just like we chose to let Jesus in. Jesus makes that same thing to everybody. Anybody can be saved. Anybody can walk behind Jesus. The trouble is, it's hard. It takes faith. Faith. And many of us have it, and some of us don't. And I don't know how to tell you to get it, except to get with some of them that do. Watch them. I've got some in here that just blow my mind. Just blow my mind. They can take one punch after another punch after another punch, and they'll get right back up and said, for Jesus Christ, I'll take another one. And they'll do it. They will do it because they know the relationship's strong with God. Hebrews was there to tell us that by faith, things can be different. Just told you some of mine. My hero is not George. My hero is a lady named Dorothy Musgrove, Beth Ann's mom, and her dad. Because had her dad not said yes for my little marriage proposal, I might not be here. Might not be who I am. I got to tell you a little blessing and close with that you're not going to believe. But I want you to know it's true. Everything I'm going to tell you right now is true. You remember me talking about a young boy at my last church that was 10 years old and he got saved? We were sitting up here in front, Jackie, just like you, and I was sharing what the gospel was in a nutshell. And I had probably 10 or 12 kids around me. And that day, it was just a regular old day, but I was sitting at home, and I was working on schoolwork because I'd been in licensed to preach school, and I come out of there, and then I went into course of study, and course of study lasted 5 years. So I was in the midst of studying. And I get a little blurb on my email that I got a new email. So I read the email, and it's from Rhonda Leake, and it says, Pastor Mike, Dustin did something tonight you might be interested in. I said, okay, what is it? And she said, well, he got saved. He's 10 years old. He's in the bedroom, and he's in there, and they normally come in there and just pray with him, for bedtime. And his mom come in there, said, okay, Dustin, you ready for bed? And she looked at him, and tears were just rolling out. And she said, well, what happened? And he said, Pastor Mike was talking about Jesus. And I asked him into my heart. 10 years old. And he came in. And so she begins to cry. Well, the father comes up. The door's open, and he always comes in and pats him on the head and all that. He comes in. Well, what'd Dustin do? And she said, well, he just got saved. Well, he just starts to crying, and the mother's crying, and Dustin's crying. And before long, Dania, his sister, walks by the bedroom, and she's kind of snickering. She said, well, what'd Dustin do? Like, he's going to get in trouble again. And they said, you'll find out tomorrow. So she drives him to school, and he gets talking about stuff. And all of a sudden she said, well, what did you do last night? Now, mind you, she's got the car stopped. It's shut off, and he's getting ready to get out. And he gets out the door, he said, and as he got out the door, he said, I got saved. And he just kept on walking. The reason this is important, he was 10 years old. Now, I don't know how old he is now. 23, 24, somewhere in there. But he's getting ready to have a baby. Not him, but his wife. But they're getting ready to have a baby. They built a brand new house, and it's right by his mom and dad's. So he's got everything in life that you could ever want for a child, okay? And all of a sudden, would you come in here and would you preach this Sunday at our church? Well, maybe. No, we really mean it. Would you come and preach at the First Christian Church in West Salem? He said, yeah, I'll come in there and preach. The little scoot has been ordained by the First Christian Church in Mount Carmel for a year, and I didn't know it, and he'd been out preaching. I got a letter from him, email from him on Thursday of this week, and he said, Pastor Mike, they want me to be their full-time pastor. I wrote back. Same thing I said when I found out he got saved. It's a good thing computers won't send tears through, because if they did, you'd be buying a new computer right about now. Same thing I said to him. And then I put down on the bottom of it, it's kind of honoring, I put at the bottom of it, you're 3 months late. 3 months ago, he filled in. 3 months ago, I told Beth Ann, they will ask him to become their preacher. And he will say yes. Right now, he works for the school system. He's a tech. He's the head tech of the high school system, the whole unit, at that young age. But he was my mentee when I was there at the church. And you could tell. And matter of fact, people my age and higher asked for him to be their teacher for Sunday school. That's how much he was anointed. What causes those things to happen? Faith. Faith. But by faith, you could be anything. Today, we are all just passing through. Our time here is short. How can we live as people of faith who are seeking not just all the good we can, but to do no harm? That's a Wesley statement. We don't want to discriminate. We don't want to alienate. We want to be the alien. Now, one of the things I wanted to share with you is this. My part for next week in this service will be just like we always do each and every year, to pray over the teachers, the students. Some people pray over your backpacks. Well, you don't always have your backpack with you. I'm talking about everywhere on the playground, everywhere at your school, being in your sports. You don't have a backpack on when you play football or basketball, so let's pray over the student, the teacher, the person. And so I'm inviting you to invite any of your people that you associate with that are kids in school, students, teachers, custodians. It doesn't matter what your job title is. If you put your feet on that school and you've got a job there or you're a student, I want you up here next Sunday to be prayed over. Then in the next service, we're doing nothing but our Sunday school teachers and our students and those that participate in Sunday school. And I do want you to come. I do want you to stick around, because after that, we don't always just do this, but after this, that's part, we're going in there to bag up our sacks for the kids in school, and that's so important. So we will try to be mindful that you can do both and still get out at the same time, but I just don't want you to run out, because your blessing's in doing, okay?